I was almost kidnapped at a rave. I live in one of the most unsafe cities in the US, so I tend to never go to the city alone at night, or alone at all for that matter. I'm also a small 23-year-old girl, which makes me an easy target if I'm alone. I frequent raves with my boyfriend, and we've always felt safe at them. People may be drugged up and or drunk, but they'll hug you, dance with you, and make you feel welcome, I guess. This particular night, this past October, we were seeing my favorite DJ of all time for the second time this year. Naturally, we stood as close to the front as we possibly could, second row. Throughout the duration of the show, I noticed the girl at the rail kept turning around and looking at me. The way she would look at me was really unsettling, like she was hungry, and I looked like Thanksgiving dinner to her. I didn't pay her much mind, I just thought maybe she was drunk or something, so I continued to enjoy the show, pretending that I didn't notice her. Around at 1 a.m., it was the middle of my favorite DJ set, and I was having the time of my life, dancing with my boyfriend and screaming the words to her every song. The girl who kept looking at me turned around and leaned towards me like she wanted to tell me something stupidly. I leaned forward as well. She said, "I want to be your friend." Confused, I told her, "We're all friends here, girl." And she scowled and said, "No, I want you to be my friend." I looked at her with a puzzled expression and didn't answer her, then turned back towards the stage to watch the show. After a few minutes, the girl turned back around to me and gave me the scariest smile I've ever seen on anyone's face, and she grabbed my arm and started pulling me out of the crowd towards the exit. I screamed and turned around to my boyfriend and started flailing my arm at him. He was very confused as to what was happening, but being the good boyfriend he is, he grabbed me and pulled me out of the girl's grasp and pulled me into a hug. I turned my head away from his chest to look at the girl as she was standing in the same spot, unwavering, scowling. After what felt like 5 minutes of her standing and staring at me, she left the venue, staring at me the entire time she was walking out. Why did she do that? What were her intentions? Did she even have a ticket for the show? I don't know, scary girl at the show, but please, let's not meet again. There was a gun in his pants. Side note, I was 21 when this happened, and I promise I'm not this person anymore. About 7 years ago, my ex's best friend and I decided we're going to a warehouse rave. I'll admit that at the time, we flipped some illegal things and were in a dark place in our lives. Normally after being at events, we would stay a few hours and then go to a regular spot to flip product there. It was our main place of profit. We had been running the ring there for 2 or 3 years. This night was normal for us, and we were ready to bring home some cash so we could prepare for the next weekend. We were very well known for many years, and we had every regular in the club come to us for their purchases. Side note, this club opened at 2 in the morning and closed at around 6:30 or 7. I was working as a go-go dancer at this club, so I was in typical rave wear, I guess. Around 4 in the morning, I had this guy come up to dance with me. Now, remember, I am a go-go dancer at a rave, not a stripper. But I thought this guy might have known that. So I start to stop and throw in a little shuffling, but then he asked if he can talk to me on the upper level. I look over at the guys I was with and they followed. We got to upstairs tables with big, comfortable armchairs. There was a group of guys sitting around who obviously had money, and he went straight for them. He asked all 3 of them to sit, and nervously we did. He begins to speak in a very serious, stern, and intimidating way. He was wanting to talk business. That's when I realized these were cartel members. They told me to stop selling, and they're taking over distribution of product. Now, I'm a very tough woman. I knew they had a gun, but we were in a club with 300 people in it. I don't think he would bother using it, so I went off about how this has been my territory for years, and I'm not going to let my club family be exposed to products that could be laced. Oops, I offended him. He turned into the Hulk. He got up from the table, grabbed the gun, and pulled me from my chair and had me in a chokehold. Then I felt the gun against my right temple. Get the fuck out of here. This business is mine. A mob had surrounded us at this point. Everyone was trying to talk him down. That just made him even more mad. So he shoots a hole into the ceiling. Then we realized this guy is serious and has no problem killing me. But then a blessing from the heavens came. Someone had low-key called the cops and they bombarded him, and I was let go. I felt thankful that I was okay, and everyone else was too. Just let's say that the club was closed down and I'm not 5 years clean, but I'll never forget that man's face or the smell of that gun going off. So, scary drug lord, let's not meet. Witch House and Leather. Well, this is my first post, but cut me some slack. I'll do this as best as I can. It's the 4th of July, and also a Friday night, so I'm itching to go out and get myself into an adventure. My friend, let's call him Bobby, calls me up saying that he got word of a rave happening in the industrial part of town, the place where all the big warehouses are located. Anyways, I tell him I'm willing to go and check it out. So, being the reckless young man we are, we got a little bit of weed, some alcohol, and headed over. Now, when we parked, I noticed this wasn't your typical rave with girls in bikinis and beads. The kids here were wearing all black and looked like they didn't enjoy the sunlight too much. We rolled a couple blunts and smoked them before going inside, so I'm high but totally aware of what's going on. I become more acutely aware of the music and recognized it as Witch House. For those who don't know, it's a genre of electronic music with occult or satanic influences. I stood in the middle of the dance floor, overcome by the strobe lights, smoke, and the smell of drugs being consumed. One thing is for sure, people were definitely smoking more pot at the show. After being separated from my friend, he found me and showed me a white baggie containing blow. He put a bump into the spot between his thumb and the index finger and shoved it in my nose. I just snorted cocaine for the first time, and I was flipping out. I moved quickly and lost myself again on the dance floor. I thought my heart was going to stop, so I looked for the nearest exit and bolted out of there. I went to the porta potty and waited for the occupant to come out. He was a tall dude, wearing some strange leather mask. He unzipped the mouth and asked me if I was high and tripping out. I told him yes, and he said he could help me calm down. He grabbed my crotch with his hand and literally pulled at my jeans so hard he broke the zipper and button. I kicked him and punched him and stumbled away. I ran holding my pants, and I did not look back. I found my friend talking to some mildly attractive girl and told him we had to leave immediately. He obliged, and in the car, I told him about the tall man who tried to rape me. Lesson learned: be careful at concerts. Psychedelic Nightmare. Goa is an idyllic tropical beach destination on the west coast of India with a rich history. It gained notoriety in the late 60s and early 70s for being a haven for hippies from Europe and America due to its laid-back culture, tolerant people, and downright cheap prices. Over the next few decades, hippies and freaks flocked to its serene beaches, introducing the first full moon parties. These parties played non-stop, hypnotic psychedelic trance music for days as people came, dozed on acid and other drugs, and frolicked into elated oblivion. I've been frequenting Goa since 2007, and the experience I wish to narrate took place in March of 2011. The party season in Goa begins in November and lasts through the winter till February, which is when all the hippies migrate to other parts of India to avoid the impending heat and humidity that engulfs Goa in the summertime. I come for the season in December 2010 with my girlfriend at the time. We stayed through the new year frequenting many raves and full moon parties, indulging heavily in LSD for most of them. We had a lot of friends from all over the world that frequented Goa from previous trips and made new ones through the time we spent there, so we felt pretty safe playing with our sanity, comforted by the fact that we had made a deep and robust support system. By March, however, all our friends had moved on to our next adventures, and Ben and I had decided to stay on and experience the beaches all to ourselves, save for a few unknown Europeans scattered here and there. Towards the final days of our trip, we decided to go out and get an early lunch at one of our favorite spots, where a few locals were handing out flyers to a party that was scheduled for that night. It was a strange sight, as there had not been any parties for the last 2 weeks as the season had come to a close. The local men approached us and handed us a flyer. We politely let them know that our trip was coming to an end and had reveled more than our fair share. They were extremely persistent, offering to sell us acid. We declined. Ecstasy, we declined again. Coke, nope. Heroin, nope. I was getting sketchy vibes from them. While it was common to be approached by locals selling acid and E, I had never been approached for coke and heroin, so I took a flyer and said maybe we'd come by for a while. I pulled them to the motorcycle we had rented for a time there. We got on and I sped off. I noticed the man staring at the rear-view mirror. We spent the rest of the day on the beach, getting stoned, and forgot all about our encounter. As the sun was descending into the horizon, Em decided that she wanted to smoke the remaining DMT that we had, as it was a perfect sunset, and we had 4 days before we headed back home. So we hit it. and both had amazing transcending experiences. We began getting nostalgic about our time here, and was bittersweet and suggested we go for the party tonight to bring a close to the trip. We had 4 tabs left, and decided to take one each right then and there. We arrived at the location for a rave a little after midnight. It was being held at a place right by the beach. We parked our bike, and dropped another tab each. We were both having a great trip prior to getting there. However, upon entering the party, we were both immediately felt like something was off. There was a typical forest-sounding psychedelic trance music playing. However, the party was filled only by locals, mostly men with a few girls here and there. Riding the bike had been a bit of an ordeal, so we decided to put our hang-ups aside and have a great time until we were sober and could return to the guest house where we had rented our room. The amount of acid we had taken was enough to go to the moon and back twice. Having experience with acid, I would estimate each tab would be about 150 micrograms. We found a corner on the far end of the dance floor and began rolling a spliff. Em and I danced for a bit. I wasn't able to shake the creepy vibe I was getting here, the encounter in the afternoon still weighing on my mind. I decided not to focus on it, grabbed Em and guided her to the front right speaker, where we proceeded to lose ourselves to the psychedelic soundscapes. I felt Em tugging on my arm, and I turned to see one of the guys from the afternoon standing right by us smiling, his teeth shining menacingly in the white light. Suddenly the acid kicked in way harder, and I began getting sinister visuals around his warping face. Like a jagged, fractal halo of doom, a sense of dread shot through my physiology as I froze. Locked eyes on his unwavering stare, he pulled out a vial from his pocket, licked his lips in a grotesque manner, and asked, "Want some acid?" I immediately grabbed Em, and we walked to a populated part of the dance floor without so much as a glance behind. Em gave me a look of confused horror, and I gave her a reassuring hug, somehow able to discern in my heavily altered state that we were safe among the crowd. We stayed there, both shaken. I told her that as soon as I began feeling sober enough to ride, we would leave. The urgency and fear in her eyes still haunts me to this day. We began to lose ourselves to the music after some time. I would force myself out of the trance to look around and make sure those guys weren't around. After a while, I began to feel safer and tried to enjoy myself. After a while, Em whispered in my ear that one of the guys was tugging at her hair, and sure enough, I looked behind and noticed the guys from the afternoon standing behind us. I guided Em further ahead to the DJ console. We cut through some people, distancing ourselves from the weirdos. The paranoia permitted my every cell. My visuals began to become menacing again. What seemed like 10 or so minutes later, I felt a tug on my pants and looked to find the same guy who had offered me acid standing by me, staring into my soul. His friends surrounded us in a circle and began menacingly laughing and pointing at us. This freaked me the fuck out. I began going up to people at the party, sharing my ordeal. The problem was, they were tripping balls just like me and avoided me. Eventually, everyone around us seemed to distance themselves. Went through many leaps of the goons, laughing and pointing at us, trying to get us help, but to no avail. I was getting the idea at the point the entire party was on this cruel joke and wanted to murder us and wanted to leave. But as we were walking to the exit, we noticed one of the guys standing right there. I turned hysterical, panicked, and full of dread, attempting to find an escape. The trees were breathing. People's faces were taking on demonic features, and my thought process would get completely derailed every minute or so, and I would have to begin the line of thinking from scratch. The bar to my right of the DJ console was just as luck would have it. I saw a local DJ friend. I guided a horrified and catatonic M to the bar and incoherently narrated what was happening to Jay, my local DJ friend. He was somehow able to grasp what I was saying. I remember him saying, "Yeah, man, the vibes just aren't right here. Lots of weird stuff going on." He told us that he'd been playing the last sets and would go get a CD case and get back. He said he would accompany us out and then we would leave together. While waiting for Jay, I looked up to the starry sky, obscured by the branches of trees. They began to merge, and I was captivated by it. Now feeling safe thanks to Jay, I suddenly feel something wet on my hand and feel like I'm being watched. I look to find a drop of water that probably fell from the trees, but as my peripheral vision becomes clearer, I see one of the goons. He is just standing there with an open vial and a dropper. I was able to figure out that he had dropped a dose of acid on my hand, and acid can be absorbed through skin. I can feel my heart burst out of my chest now, my throat choking with fear, and pull M with me and bolt for the exit. I can feel them in pursuit. In spite of all the confusion and visual madness I was feeling, I was able to find our motorcycle and we were off. Only seconds later, I could hear the bikes barely behind us. The chase seemed to last for hours. M was shivering in fear and holding on to me as tight as she could. We barely exchanged words. I was going as fast as I could, with two of the goons on a motorcycle on our trail. I felt tears run down my cheeks as they were parallel to us. They were both laughing hysterically. They seemed to be drunk. The guy on the back reached to his side and pulled out a gun. Time froze, and I saw him pointed at me, smiling frame by frame. I froze, not looking at the road ahead, my eyes locked on his. He burst out laughing, yelling the word, "Boom!" and motion recoil from the gun without firing a round. He and his friend navigating were hysterically laughing. They slowed down, took a perpendicular turn at the next junction, and sped off. Confusion, fear, and a host of other emotions overwhelmed me, and I do not remember how I was able to get back to our room. We locked ourselves in the room and held each other in the darkness till the drugs wore off the next day. In hindsight, I think the gun the goon was wielding was toy. Em and I both still suffer from PTSD to this day. I didn't take acid for another year, Em a year and a half. We still get flashbacks of that night, both while tripping and while sober as well. We aren't together anymore, but still share a strong bond. I learned later that some locals from Gao would like to freak out travelers on LSD, often spiking them, and would revel in the pleasure of watching their sanity unravel as they play games with their minds. Hopefully this serves as a cautionary tale for some who may want to choose to backpack around the world. I regret none of my travels, but always make sure I'm with a group of people I can trust if I'm putting myself in a vulnerable position. Nicotine and letter fetishist Facebook stalker. Okay, so this all happened a few years ago, and only stopped about 4 months ago, and I feel like enough time has passed to justify talking about it, considering the depths this guy went to try to get a hold of me. It all started around late 2013, when I still attended these sad, if not somewhat fun meetups that were organized through Tumblr and the like, where teenagers aged 13 to 19-ish would meet up and smoke and drink, and just generally be social as hell. Everyone would wear awesome clothes, and considering that I grew up in Britain, there would often be a range of cultures and underground fashion type cliques and groups, punks, Decora girls, etc. It all went well, and between squat raves and these meetups, my young bored self was pretty content. I briefly ran away from home during this time, and stayed either in my grandparents' flat or on a random sofa somewhere, or just walked around London all night, which gave rise to other creepy encounters I'll talk about sometime. Generally speaking, I'm a pretty intimidating looking guy. I'm 6'4", and had most of my hair shaved off into a mohawk at the time when this all took place. Anyways, one day when I was at one of these meetups, my friend Moonshine handed me a bottle of homemade booze and told me to come and say hello to his friend. Generally speaking, I'm pretty social, so this was okay. So I wander over, and to my 16-year-old surprise, this guy looks much older, about 22, 23, and has a totally shaved head, and this kind of deadly black rubbed out stain under both of his eyes. We get talking for a while, and he told me his name, and that he worked closely with the BBC. We ended up talking about the media industry and where the best places to go for media work would be, and generally I felt like my first impressions of him were wrong. So, after about 15 to 20 minutes of casual conversation and weird Russian cigarettes, we all decided to go chill in the Macy's next door, wherein I take out my diary and make a note of how I feel and what I'm doing. Note, I'm keeping a diary for some reason at this point in my life, probably some stupid teenage thing. I don't remember why, really. So anyways, I get it out and he zones in on it. He's like, "What is that? Do you write? Can I read it?" And I very uncomfortably let him flick through. He then said something about how he felt like we had a communicative connection and gave me this look like he found some of my gold mine. Needless to say, I whisked the book back off of him and sat next to my friend Moonshine for the rest of the meal. Before I leave though, I stupidly agreed to exchange Facebooks. I thought, what's the worst possible thing that could happen? My friend vouches for him and says he's cool, so I see no issues here. Later that night, I found a stranger to give me some cigarettes, and then I wander home and don't think about it for another 2 months. This is when it gets truly weird. He likes every single one of my photos on Facebook and messages me to say how rare it is to meet someone so beautiful. I don't know how to respond, but I didn't assume he was talking about how I looked and was trying to say something about how I behaved or my personality or something like that, which even then I found pretty excessive. After a while, he starts making small talk and hinting here and there that he's into kink, which, considering I'm already uncomfy around him, makes me even more, That one day, he messages me out of the blue to tell me about all of his fetishes and how he wants to tie me up in a leather coffin suit and piss on me. Silly alarm bells and sirens and red flags and everything just go off all at fucking once, but I try to give it as much benefit of the doubt as one can and brush it off. I tell him I'm not really interested, and this seems to put him into a really shitty mood. I forget to mention that I Skype a lot, so if I talk to people online, it's usually through Skype. One time I was Skyping Ted, he was telling me that he was at home at his apartment after a huge party, which seemed pretty normal for a 23-year-old, but then he started to have an off-camera conversation with his mother, which didn't seem to match up with his supposed media high life. Anyways, I stopped Skyping him after the piss and leather incident, but he keeps messaging me a lot, almost to the point that, without replying at all, I'm getting like 20 to 30 random messages a day, asking me all kinds of questions about where I live and what I do. One day he reveals to me that he has written me something, which I'm surprised by, so I actually read it. It's a 3-page long, detailed description of me sitting at a cafe and smoking a cigarette that previous morning with a bunch of random sexualized content attached to it. Now, I just brush it off, but it was about me at a cafe in London that he obviously waited at for me, just so he could watch me. At this, I decided that enough is enough and get him off of social media. My friend Moonshine got a hold of me a few weeks later to tell me he had been writing a blog about me, with detailed sexual fantasies involving bodily affluence and various forms of restraint. I've since had all lines of communication blocked and ensured that even if he wanted to, he couldn't communicate with me or know where I am, since his friend also gave him the bollocking of a lifetime and basically taught him about the concept of stalking and why his behavior was fucked up. Anyways, it's not really all that interesting, but Ted, the creepy leather guy who wanted to burn my ass ring with lit cigarettes. Let's not meet. They try taking her into the bus with them. A group of my friends went to EDC in Las Vegas, and one of the girls went missing at the end of the last set. They mistook another girl for her when they were going to leave. Dehydrated and with their phones dead, my friends went to the security tents because that was the location to meet up at if they were ever separated. Jessie wasn't there, and a few people stayed at the tent to report her missing, which was brave because they were obviously coming down from drugs, and have to report to security that the friend who also took drugs was gone. Again, it's pretty terrifying losing a friend when everyone is not in a normal state of mind. Luckily, an hour later, a group went over to the tent with Jessie. She was still recovering from her high and petrified. A guy from the group told my friends and the security people that they found Jessie with a couple who claimed that she was their friend and that they were taking her to a hotel. They noticed her being dragged by the wrist by the woman and were watching the couple and my friend from a short distance. The couple and my friend were in line for the tram, and the group walked towards them. They were talking to the couple about trading candy bracelets, and the couple snubbed them. People go to raves as an escape from reality, drugs, and music, and are usually in friendly spirits. They also noticed the differences in outfits of my friend, who was decked out in comparison to the couple. As the couple and Jessie were about to step onto the tram, when the girl from the group grabbed Jessie away from the couple. Because there was a crowd, the couple did nothing and let my friend be taken by the group. I'm really thankful for that group of people who pretty much saved Jessie. I don't even want to think about the things that they could have done to her. So, to the creepy couple who tried to take my friend with them on the train, I don't know if your motive was to kidnap females who were separated from the group or whatnot, but I hope you get caught somehow.